So we limped along for a while. I went to everyone I knew, everyone I could think of, and asked them to believe in me and believe in this. And it really was just that. It was a big idea and a business card. And
It's okay.
sorry.
You don't need to apologize.
Well, I got pretty far without crying. Everyone who knows me and knows my story, I always cry. Because when you said, is this what you dreamed of? And I would say, so much bigger.
This is NICU Babies Parent Support with Kathryn Whitaker, a podcast from Hand to Hold, a national nonprofit that provides free personalized support, resources, and community before, during, and after a NICU stay. My conversations here focus on education and personal stories with medical and hospital professionals, counselors, therapists, and NICU moms and dads from across the country. So whether you're preparing for a NICU stay, you're currently there, or you're months and years past your stay, you belong here. The NICU is hard. We're here to help. I'm your host, Kathryn Whitaker, the mom of 6 children, including my very own NICU baby, and I'm so grateful that you're here. Howdy, y'all, and welcome back to a brand new season of the podcast. Season 9 is all about finding your new normal. The episode that y'all heard, the very first one of this particular season, I kind of give you an overview of what you can expect in this particular season. I was really excited about this one because I feel like that's the one thing that people ask me so much is, do you feel like things have gone back to normal or do you feel normal again? And I'm like, let's define normal. And if there are any 2 women in the world that understand what it's like to redefine your new normal, it is Kelli Kelley and Katrina Moline, both of my guests today. They have a direct connection to Hand to Hold. Kelli Kelley was the one who had the vision to start Hand to Hold. As she will tell you in today's interview, it was an organic start, but it has been so fruitful and helped hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of NICU families. I am deeply grateful to her. And then also to Katrina Moline. I've had Katrina on the podcast before. She's the current Hand to Hold executive director. And we met at the Scrub and Sink at Dell Children's Medical Center here in Austin. I know that their stories of what their origin story is, of how they began their journey in the NICU, will deeply touch you and make you feel seen in the sense that they know how you feel. So if this is the very first episode that you've ever listened to the podcast, their stories alone, I believe, will help you feel seen. What makes me even more excited is that from that seen place, from that lived experience, they are creating and continue to create a nonprofit that is more than a podcast. Y'all, there are so many NICU podcasts out there, and many of them are excellent. They have amazing guests. They provide great resources and perspectives, but none of them, and I am biased, but none of them match the vast, varied experiences that Hand to Hold gives to parents, whether it be peer-to-peer counseling, bereavement and loss support for siblings, for dads. There are just so many things that they offer that nobody else does. It's the holistic approach of a Hand to Hold experience. And if you find yourself in the NICU, Hand to Hold, you just go to handtohold.org and click Get Support, and you are immediately going to get someone to check in with you and say, what do you need? Here's some things that we offer. And so today is all about, yes, telling you this is what all Hand to Hold has to offer, but it's also, like all of our podcasts focus on, is making you feel seen. In particular, I want to help you find your new normal this season. That's what it's all about. So my 2 guests today, and I don't normally have 2 guests, but I'm super excited. The first one is Kelli Kelley, and the other one is Katrina Moline. So we'll start with Kelli. She's the founder and CEO of Hand to Hold. She founded Hand to Hold in 2010 after struggling for years with perinatal mood disorders related to the premature births of both of her children, one at 24 weeks and one at 34 weeks. She's the founding member of the NICU Parent Network, and she serves as vice president of the board of directors for the National Coalition for Infant Health and is a member of the board of directors of the Texas Perinatal Association. Kelly lives in Austin with her husband and her long hair, Diva Dachshund. In her free time, she enjoys reading, listening to podcasts, and keeping up with all of her NICU graduates, of which there are many, who are now in college. Katrina, however, she was named Hand to Hold's executive director in 2024 after joining the team as the operations director in 2018. She holds a Bachelor of Science degree in communications from Texas State University, and she's been a part of the Hand to Hold family since 2009, just like me. She received peer-to-peer mentoring after the birth of her son at 24 weeks, and then she later served as a peer mentor herself. She also lives in Austin and enjoys reading, spending time with family and friends, and being outdoors. On a personal note, and I share this in the interview, Katrina and I met at the Scrub and Sink. I've done a podcast interview with her before, and we had a moment because I was like, that moment at the sink changed me. And then Kelly was the very first phone call that I made on day 20. Hand to Hold was in its infancy, just getting ready to launch. And a friend was like, you need to call Kelly. And I called her, and all three of us agree that Hand to Hold has changed our life. I am so excited that you get to hear this interview with the two of them and their hearts and what they expect and what they hope for Hand to Hold as we make the transition from Kelly over to Katrina. But I know that Hand to Hold is in great hands, as are you. So without further ado, let's get to this really, really great conversation. I know we're not in the same room, but it is really lovely to see your faces. And for those that are listening, these are two of my favorite people in the world, Katrina and Kelly. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Very excited.
I love that I met one of you because of a newspaper and one of you because I was washing my hands at the NICU sink. So maybe we'll start with you, Kelly. You founded Hand to Hold back in 2009. I found out about it because my NICU nurse handed me an article in the Austin American Statesman. And I know that all good nonprofits start because there's a story behind it. So it might be helpful for people to understand a little bit of what's been your experience with the NICU. I know you've not been there once, but twice. So maybe give people an idea of what you experienced in the NICU with both of your babies.
I was driving home from work. I actually left a little early because I didn't feel great. And I was in rush hour traffic and I was in labor, but I didn't know I was in labor. Hadn't had a class. Up until then, everything had been perfectly normal and healthy. And our first
And this is your first
pregnancy.
baby,
Yeah, first baby. So everything was planned, started those prenatal vitamins and all those things. And so truly didn't know I was in labor. But when I got home, my husband was there and I just said, something's wrong. I don't know. And I don't feel right. And we still laugh about it today that we called our moms instead of 911, right? Like your mom is 911. And
Right.
so they asked me some questions I had not thought to ask myself, and said that we should call an ambulance. So luckily, I did make it to the hospital before my water broke. And they basically said, there's nothing we can do now that the water has broken. We need to deliver the baby.
And how many weeks are you at this point, Kelly?
Well, well, that was an interesting part of the story. We couldn't remember. We were just in such shock. I didn't know that that meant that there was a possibility that he could survive. That's just how unprepared I was. I don't remember any of that and what to expect when you're expecting of, this could happen at 24 weeks. So they put me to sleep and I woke up and was in the recovery, and they actually told me that I had a baby girl. And someone else said, no, she had a boy. And so they're like arguing over my bed. And I was just like, wait, the baby survived. The baby survived. And they said, yes, he's in the NICU. And I didn't know what that meant. I had never really heard of a NICU. I had had a couple of people in my life who had had preterm babies, but to me, that was just a early baby, a small baby. Like I really had no understanding of just how much my life was about to change, but was just delighted to know that we had a chance, that he was actually being treated in the NICU.
Well, we'll come back to the rest of his story, but you got to tell people how old that baby is now.
24. So 24 weeks and now
Wow.
24 years old. Yeah, he lives in LA now. He's making movies and movie trailers and living his best life. So I always love to share that because I think it does give a lot of hope.
Yeah.
He was a pound and a half in the NICU for 4.5 months. So he's doing
Was going to
great.
be my next question is how many days? Every NICU mom knows exactly how long they were in the NICU. So second baby comes along. You're how far along and then what happens? What happens with that pregnancy?
Well, I had to go back to work to keep my insurance for Jackson. And I had the best insurance at that time, and, so I worked part-time for a year, and then was just really overwhelmed with all his doctor's appointments and follow-up care and surgeries and medications, all of those things,
Mhm.
and my job, they were wonderful, but they said they needed me to come back full-time, and they were great in how they communicated what my travel schedule was and how many people I'd be managing and all of those things, and I will never forget that discussion of with Mike of, "I can do this, but from you, I will need these things." And he said, "Let's just do it. Let's just everything we've got, let's focus on him. Let's have you be at home." And of course, type A brain, the switch was like, "Well, if I'm gonna be home, I should go ahead and have another baby." Like, I wanted him to
Let's
be close.
maximize our time
Let's
here.
do
Yeah.
this, right? If I'm gonna be home, let's go ahead and have another baby. But I also knew, I'm healthy. Like the
Right.
doctor had said he felt like I could have another full-term pregnancy, and I wanted to do that sooner rather than later. So we did, and I had a cerclage. Everything was great. I was doing wonderfully. And at 34 weeks, my water broke at home. And so while I was much less stressed about the situation, my husband was just in panic mode. I had a somewhat rather typical birth for her. It was in the middle of the night. It was a C-section. It wasn't my doctor. He was out of town. So some of those things. But they told
Yeah.
us when she was born that she looked great. Anyway, so they took her to the NICU to be assessed, and then they didn't bring her back. So that was the hard part that
Yeah.
they discovered she started declining pretty quickly. So she was 34 weeks, but she was born with a blood disorder. So it was a very different kind of NICU stay because with Jack, I always talk about, he was a pound and a half. There was no way I could care for him. I knew that, he had to be in the care of all these doctors. But with Lauren, she was 5 pounds, 7 ounces. She was just this beautiful, perfect little baby. But yet I still like couldn't hold her and she was getting sicker and they didn't know what was wrong. So two very different experiences, very challenging in their own ways. But she was there right over a week, but came home with medications and care plans and, a lot of challenges we never expected with a 34-weeker.
Of course. And how old is Lauren now?
She's 21. She's
Oh
about to
my
graduate.
gosh. That's
She's in
crazy.
her last semester in college and, doing great. So I'm extremely blessed.
Well, you've been the mom. I know you're the mom to 2 NICU babies, but I would argue that you've been the mom to a lot more NICU babies because you've loved a lot of NICU moms through the NICU. Which brings me to Katrina. So Katrina and I met at the Scrub and Sink at Dell Children's, and you have been on the podcast before, Katrina, but for people that haven't listened to those episodes, give them an idea of what your introduction to the NICU was like.
It's interesting the parallels between Kelly's story and ours. It feels a little bit like it was meant to be sometimes. I was also 24 weeks. I had been listening to a podcast, and it was like a weekly podcast. So I knew 24 weeks was viability because that was the topic for that week's podcast. On the way home, I, thought maybe it's gas or, first baby, young, you don't know. You have, like Kelly said, you haven't done any of those classes. You have no idea what you're in for or what you're looking for. And so we got home that night, and actually on the way home, I said, "I'm not feeling great. Let's stop." And we checked my blood pressure, and it was fine. We checked my husband's; it was high. And then we got home, and I just continued to feel worse, but didn't really put two and two together until the contractions were 1 minute apart, and I was in the shower by myself, and I was in so much pain that I couldn't even call out for Caleb to come and help me. And so it progressed really quickly. It was a precipitous labor, and my water broke, and I gave birth to him here, and my husband and I gave him CPR, thanks to the amazing people at 911 who walked us through that. And longest 4 minutes of our lives, but the emergency responders came and kind of took over, and they cut the cord, and they gave me clothes, and they started him on oxygen, and they took us to our regional hospital here in our suburb of Austin, and then they stabilized him there. And later that night, Dell Children's came and transported him to Dell. And he spent the next 150 days there fighting for his life. He just did not have the benefit of being born in a hospital. He had all of the odds stacked against him. Grade 3 and 4 brain bleeds, was without oxygen for who knows how long. But 15 years later, he is absolutely the light of my life, and he makes our family better just by being a part of it, and wouldn't change any second of it, even though it was the most tumultuous and trying time of our lives, without a doubt.
Well, I think it's important to pause and say thank you to both of you. I know how hard it is to relive, these really life-altering days and to share them with people, but also look back and think, who would have thought 15 years ago we'd be in this spot, that we'd be here doing what we do, and it's because our kids sort of push us to get uncomfortable and do things that we didn't think that were possible. So I just wanted to say thank you to both of you for sharing that. So let's talk a little bit about hand to hold, because I know some people listen to the podcast and there's a lot of NICU podcasts out there, but I'm biased, admittedly, as are I think both of you. Is that the thing that I love about Hand to Hold is that the podcast is one of many arms and many sort of outreach efforts that Hand to Hold has. So, Kelly, when you founded Hand to Hold, was this like in the vision? Is this what you were hoping for, or was the scale smaller? Like when you founded it, what was the intention when you did it back in 2009?
I love this question. I'm looking forward to the answer.
Well, it kind of has been a lot of years, right? And so it is a little blurry. But I think it remains the same today of just not wanting people to feel so alone. I felt like
Yeah.
Jackson got the best possible care, but in many ways, I felt like I was invisible and I didn't feel comfortable in talking about the things I was really thinking and feeling because I didn't want to be judged. And some of the things that I was thinking and feeling were pretty dark.
Yeah.
I I did have when I was in the hospital, a woman called me and I did not know her. I knew her brother. He had gone to school with me in high school and he had told her about my story. And so the phone rings one day. I'm alone in my hospital room and this beautiful woman, we're still friends today, said, I know my brother asked me to call you. I had a baby last year, 24 weeks. I just wanted to, share my story and I'm here for you. And so that was my kind of first introduction to what it feels like to have someone else who really understands what you're going through. And so it was several years after, it was after Lauren had been born. I think Lauren's NICU stay brought up a lot of stuff that I had not yet dealt with. So they're 2.5 years apart. But I think that I kept myself very busy and tried very hard not to have to process all of those emotions and think about it was more of like, he survived, he's doing great, everything I've got focused on him. And then his sister was born. And all these emotions and things kind of came back up. And so it was after that that I started, thinking, I think I need some therapy. I think I need to get some support. And I had a really hard time even just finding a therapist who had worked with anyone who had had a NICU stay. And so started that process, but then kind of simultaneously started talking to the NICU director at St. David's where my baby was born and said, I just would love to be involved. I am so grateful for the care my son got, but would love to see parents come and share their stories during support group. And there's just a few things I would love to give you some feedback about.
Just a
And
few. Yeah, we got a
just a
few
few.
ideas.
And she was lovely. I want to say she is now 15 years later. She is our program director here at Hand to Hold. She always told me when she retired from nursing that she would love to work at Hand to Hold. And I love that because she believed in it from the beginning. And what she said was it really transformed St. David's NICU in that prior to Hand to Hold, it was the people who were most in crisis, who maybe required, just a lot more attention from the social worker, not always from a mental health perspective, but maybe they didn't have transportation or, just have a family or have a home. We forget we come from all different backgrounds.
Yeah.
And so what Hand to Hold did was kind of stabilize and make sure that every single parent had access to support. It started out with me coming and doing support groups. And then it was, can I help throw a party on Mother's Day? And would you be open to, us bringing in some educational components? And it just grew. So it was very organic. It started in my extra bedroom at home. I was very uneducated, maybe delusional. I thought that I could write a grant and I would get this funding and off we would go. And what I didn't understand is you really have to prove the program. And we had to have, at least 3 to 5 years of, data before we could get a grant. So we limped along for a while. I went to everyone I knew, everyone I could think of, and asked them to believe in me and believe in this. And it really was just that. It was a big idea and a business card. And
It's okay.
sorry.
You don't need to apologize.
Well, I got pretty far without crying. Everyone who knows me and knows my story, I always cry. Because when you said, is this what you dreamed of? And I would say, so much bigger. I mean, it is so much bigger. And I just think for everyone in all our circumstances, when you give it to God and you're doing good work and you're truly helping others, it's blessed. And you better get ready. You better strap yourself in because it can get big real fast. And luckily, I met amazing people like Katrina and you and so many more all along the way. This is, it was my idea and my business card, but it has been some incredible people who have worked for Hand to Hold over the past 15 years and just built it and built it and built it. And now I feel like I'm the bus driver and Katrina now is taking over those reins, but just so many people on board doing incredible things. I just love, Kathryn, you think about full circle of, when I started thinking about what would retirement look like and what would have to be true. And I was the voice of the podcast for years.
Yeah.
And it was
And a good one at that.
well, thank you. But it's a lot of work and a lot of commitment and that on top of everything else and running the organization. And I just remember I was walking my dog and I was just like, who would I give this to? Who would I entrust this to? And it was just as your name just rang out so clear of who else would be better at hosting this amazing podcast.
Well, what I love is that I came to you for advice for something completely unrelated. And you're like, also, by the way, I was like, no. I just came for advice on something. But I know that, back in 2009, it was a baby nonprofit, like you said, pretty organic at that time, but it was starting to really go public. And Katrina and I ended up being some of the very first people that were mentored. And back then, it was you. You were the mentor. So, Katrina,
Yeah.
maybe take us back to 2009 and tell us a little bit about what what the connection between Hand to Hold did for your family and sort of how that's manifested itself to what you do today. This podcast is produced by Hand to Hold, a national nonprofit, but we're more than simply a podcast. Be sure to download our app in the Apple Store or on Google Play, or you can visit our website to discover all the ways that we can support you as a NICU parent at handtohold.org. You can join one of our support groups, sign up for counseling, find loss and bereavement support, request a peer mentor, or check out our educational resources and family stories. And all of that is at no cost to you.
I really feel like Hand to Hold changed my life. And, I think the NICU changes everybody's life in one way or another. But when I came home from the NICU, with this tiny baby, and I was isolated in our home and tethered to an oxygen tube, it felt more isolating than the NICU had. And I was not prepared for that. I thought that coming home was going to be normal, whatever that means. And I would just get here and everything would be the way I had dreamed that it would be. And boy, was I sadly mistaken. You can't go anywhere. You can't have people over. We're on all of these monitors at home. And this is back in 2009. Those monitors are so much better now.
They are.
And so it was just a very different experience. And the entire thing left me wanting to give back, and kind of true to my nature, not thinking about what do I need, but what can I give somebody else? How can I make something positive out of this experience that has been so traumatizing? And through a couple of phone calls, got connected to Kelly Kelley and Hand to Hold. And I remember I was driving down Mopac and I was on the phone with Kelly, and she asked me, well, how long have you been home and what was your experience? And I think we had maybe been home 6 weeks at that point. And she just very in her way said, you need help. You don't need to be providing help to other people. You need help. And nobody had said that to me before. I think probably because of my personality, I just kind of, you know, do my best and power through. And so everybody thought I was fine. I thought I was fine. And Kelly knew immediately that I was not fine.
Yeah.
And that I needed support. And that phone call changed my life. It was another 10 years before I came to work for Hand to Hold. But Hand to Hold gave me so many things in those 10 years that I can't imagine my life without. My very best friend I met at a Hand to Hold support group, who also has a NICU baby who has special needs as a teen now. And, we lean on each other really heavily to get through the days that are challenging and the diagnoses that are challenging. And I just, I still have a connection to every single one of those moms that was in that support group. And I cannot say enough good things about the power of peer mentorship, of having somebody that you can reach out to who gets it, who knows what you're going through and has been there. And at that time, those peer mentors were people who were in the same part of their journey as I was. But I also had somebody that I could reach out to who was a couple of years down the road and had a similar diagnosis. And, those two things are what got me through to, some semblance of healthy mental health.
Well, it's the thing that I love most about Hand to Hold because, I mean, biased, yes, I love the podcast, but I also love that there are so many different arms. We have bereavement support because not everybody leaves the NICU with their baby. We have support groups for moms and for dads. There's great resources for siblings. Like there's so many things that are so much bigger than there's definitely the phone call. There's the peer-to-peer support, which I think is amazing, but there's just so many other arms. So when you talk about feeling isolated. I never once felt isolated with Hand to Hold. Like, I called Kelly on day 20, cold called her. Someone gave me her number, and I was like, I said, they told me to call you, but I think I'm okay. And for the first time, somebody asked, like, how are you? Her first question wasn't, how is your baby? But her first question was, how are you?
Mhm.
And I knew, we all know this, that our babies are being taken care of by amazing doctors and nurses and specialists, but rarely do we turn to the caregivers, whether that's the mom, the dad, the grandparent, whoever that may be, and say, like, but how are you doing? And it's what I love most about Hand to Hold. So there's a big transition. Kelly is getting ready in some time in 2025 to hang up the hat and enjoy retirement. Well deserved, by the way. So, as y'all sort of make this transition, Katrina, sometimes people worry, like, oh, well, if the founder's not around, people lose their passion. But I know that's not true, because I see a whole group of people who now work for Hand to Hold who were directly impacted by it. So, what are you most excited about as y'all sort of move in to 2025 and beyond, and what Hand to Hold can do, and what's on the horizon?
For me, I think it's just, I'm trying to figure out what our new normal is. Kelly has been our guiding light and, all of our kind of like big sister at Hand to Hold for the last however many years you've been around Hand to Hold. That's how long Kelly has been an influential piece of your life. And so trying to figure out what does that look like and how do we transition to ensure sustainability of the organization, to make sure that we're continue to be mission driven and focused, to make sure that we're strategic in how we grow and not just growing for growth's sake. There are things that I think every NICU mom has that are a part of her journey that are particular pain points for her. And, Kelly talked a lot about in her story how she felt like she wasn't seen at the bedside. I never felt that way. I had a lot of relationships with the nurses and the nurse practitioners and social workers and palliative care. And I always felt that they cared for me and that they did a good job of checking in with me. But when I came home, I just felt really isolated and invisible to the same, way that Kelly said it. And so I think for me, a particular pain point is how do we continue to support those moms once they've gone home and those caregivers, not just the moms, but the entire family, because that really is a time when you are alone and you're alone with those thoughts that can sometimes be dark and troubling, and you don't have somebody that you can turn to and ask for help. You're just there by yourself, going through the motions, doing the things that you have to do as a mom to take care of this person whose life depends on you. And so for me, that's a particular pain point, and it's something that I'm passionate about that is different. And so trying to find that way that I can be true to myself and my story and my journey, but also still stay true to Hand to Hold's, founder and everything that got us to where we are today.
I love that you mentioned that we're all sort of I know that as an organization, finding a new normal, but I mean, I think every NICU caregiver that walks into the NICU, and then when we leave, we're like, so my definition of normal has changed,
Hmm.
and now what? So, Kelly, if there's a mom or a dad listening to this podcast and they are finding themselves in the NICU and it feels very foreign to them, when they reach out to Hand to Hold, how do they reach out to Hand to Hold, and what are some of the things that they can expect when they reach out to the organization that they might receive through support? Which I should mention, all of it's free, but I'll let you take it from there.
Well, we certainly want them to connect with us. I believe in early intervention. We believe in early intervention for our children, and I believe in early intervention for the parents as well. And so, as soon as they can get their footing and have capacity to open their laptop or go to their phone and go to our website, and there's a big button and it says get support, and you're going to get an immediate response. It's going to give you a lot of different ways that you can connect with us. And now you can connect with a support group almost every day of the week. And we have support groups in English and Spanish, and they're all virtual. and they're free. And so I love that part. But I also love the podcast because I think it's an easy way in for you to kind of dip your toe in and understand other people have a similar story. I think we find a lot of fathers who, you know, I'll check out this podcast before I go openly start talking about my feelings in a room with other people, right?
Right.
But then, through our app, you can connect with other families on Facebook, other families, be part of our community, get a peer mentor, someone who has had a very similar experience to your own, who's several years out. We call them more seasoned and ready at their ready. They've done the work and they're ready
Yeah.
to support other people. So, that's just a few ways, but kind of finding what works for you. And I think it changes throughout your NICU journey. What might be right for you when you're at the baby's bedside might change once you've gone home, like Katrina said, and feeling isolated and alone. So hopefully we are here for you before, if you know that your baby has a diagnosis or will be needing surgery, if you're on bed rest, we want to support you throughout the NICU stay, and then after, and for as long as you need us. And hopefully you're going to develop some deep relationships just like the three of us have, right? I remember, Kathryn, you asking me to come sit with you during one of the first surgeries. And my husband saying, doesn't she have family and friends and other people? Like thought that was so profound.
Yeah.
That I would be
But
the
nobody
one.
else understood. You did.
Nobody else, right? And so it just and it just fosters such deep connection for all of us. But I also want to say, I want to go back to your question you asked, Katrina, and kind of the new normal and the vision and all of that. And one of the things I'm really, really grateful for is that we're ready. I could never walk away from the past, how many years, truly, how many years of hard work and trying to get this off the ground, and knowing that, last year we did more than 111,000 sessions of support. Right. And how could I walk away and just say, well, whatever happens, happens. Right. So we have been very intentional for the last 2 years getting ready for me to leave. And I would, if I didn't know and trust that we have all the right people ready to lead, I tried to hire Katrina. Bryce was still in a baby carrier. And she was like, I'm not quite ready yet. So it did take 10 years. The podcast has the perfect mom now and is nurturing and caring for the podcast. And Katrina is ready and she will lead in her own way. But what's always going to be true is that NICU experience. And it doesn't matter if you're a Gen Z or you're a boomer like me, of seeking that connection and needing that support. And hopefully we'll just keep reinventing ourselves. I think we've really found a secret sauce, and that is our family support specialist. They are all NICU parents, but they go through significant training and certification, and they are mental health peer specialists. And that's our secret sauce because they're working with families in trauma. And so I just hope that we continue to meet families where they are, keep thinking about new ways to reach more families. But the most important thing is the true impact that we have. We now offer counseling in Texas and Florida. So just another layer of free support for families.
That's what I love about nonprofits is in order for them to grow, they have to change. So it's all a good thing. I do have one last question for both of you because I think that it's really important for people to hear wisdom and advice. So if there is a mom or dad listening and they're really struggling to find their new normal, knowing what you know now, what would you tell them? Katrina, I'm going to start with you.
Find somebody who gets it. Find somebody who has walked that journey and that understands what you're going through. I can't say enough how transformational that is. I've seen it, I've witnessed it firsthand, but I've also been, blessed by it myself. And just whether it's somebody with handhold or somebody in your life, but just find somebody who knows what you're going through that you can connect with and talk to them because that changes everything.
Good advice. Kelly, what would you say?
Uh, I would concur. Find your community, find the people who understand, but also I think just allowing yourself to feel it. It's okay. It's okay. This is not what you expected. It's okay to be scared, not knowing how you're going to parent in this new normal. It's okay to be disappointed and angry and sad. Like all of it is okay. And it doesn't make you a bad parent. I think that joining our community and finding that support through Handhold, but also, I'm a big believer in counseling. And like I said earlier, early intervention and not waiting until everything's okay with the baby. Like that's really what I felt like. I felt like, you know, my focus should be on the baby and we don't have the money. I don't have the time. What would I do with the baby while I get support? Well, Hand to Hold has been working for 15 years to get rid of all of those barriers. And so I just really hope that people won't wait to get the support. I think that in order for you to care for the baby, you got to care for yourself and care for your marriage and your partnerships and, just really letting people help you and care for you as you care for your baby.
That's really good advice that I know comes from hard places, but it's hard won advice. So, thank both of you. I'm glad that I still get to see you both on a regular basis. But for all that you do for Hand to Hold, thank you. And I hope that people take away from this podcast that while the podcast is one component of what Hand to Hold does, it's a part of a much bigger system that really does really strive to support parents all the way, whether it's before their NICU experience, during their NICU, and certainly after. So, thank you to the two of you. Well, I'm going to make the recap short and say we said it all in the interview. I just want to add this final thing. And I know that we mentioned it in there, but I think it's worth mentioning again that all the resources that Hand to Hold provides are completely free to you. They are in English and in Spanish, and they are nationwide. So you do not have to live in Texas to receive their services. There are just so many things that they offer and so many things that they do, and they do it so, so well. So do yourself a favor, send this podcast episode to someone that you know that's in the NICU. Tell them to log on to handtohold.org and click Get Support. And with that, you're going to hear a little bit about this next time.
Just to keep surrendering. I mean, he does get you through it in the best way possible. And it's better if you step out of the way.